Once again, it is time for a monthly reading wrap up. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Tati, and today we are going to talk about all of the books that I read in January. I had such a good month of reading in January. Not only was I really motivated to read through this giant TBR that I picked out, but most of the books that I read were really good. So I'm a little nervous going into February because I'm not sure how it's going to hold up to January, but it's not a competition. Also, I know that February is going to be a lighter month of reading for me because my folks are coming to visit for a week. Also, I'm prioritizing a couple of arcs that I got from NetGalley, and I typically read quickly when I'm doing immersive reading with the physical book and the audiobook because I can really turn up the speed on the audiobook while reading the physical book and still comprehend it all. I know some people get really weird about people like speed reading, but I enjoy it. It actually keeps me engaged because I feel like everything is moving more quickly. Like I'm getting my instant gratification basically. So it works for me. So I'm going to be reading the actual printed digital copy on my Kindle, and that's not a problem, but I just read more slowly when I don't have the audiobook. So February is going to be a lighter month of reading, but that's okay. We got this huge buffer from January. Without further ado, let's talk about every book that I read in the month of January. First book, which is not on this pile, The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. If you don't know what this is about, it's twins. They are black, but they are light-skinned enough that they can pass as white. Basically, the book starts at this trajectory where one sister chooses to live her life as a white woman, and she marries a white man and has a child, and her sister continues to live her life as a black woman, and you can kind of see how these choices have impacted their lives over time, but also their relationship with one another. Because when Stella, the one who passes as white, makes her decision, she basically cuts ties and goes AWOL, like nobody knows where she is and doesn't hear from her. So the rest of her family is left wondering what ever happened to her. So when you are watching how their two different lives play out, just know that they are totally separated, and how the one sister deals with that, and how Stella deals with the fact that she's basically disowned her family to go live a completely different life. And then of course, since they both have children, you see kind of the generational impacts as well. And overall, it's a great premise. I can understand why people really like the book. My problem was, because this was such a character study of the two sisters and their families, the book was almost leading us down this path of like, here's what happened to Stella, and here's what happened to everybody else. And we're not looking at them changing, because the story starts with them changing, really. I think that's the crux of the issue here. Instead of seeing where these paths take them and how they change as people as a result of their choices, it's more so showing how people choose who they are, and once they have chosen that, it's basically impossible to change them. And we don't end up with this big reveal at the end, or this big third act conflict, or this big character development arc for any of the characters, because we're just watching where their lives have taken them. But also, all of the side characters felt like pawns in the story. None of them really had any purpose other than either like a comfort blanket for some characters or something to move the plot along. Like, no one had any big arcs. It just lacked a lot of depth. And so I think I rated the book 3 stars, but the more I think about it, I have to rate it 2 stars. I think I have to downgrade it. So needless to say, I did not enjoy The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett, which I know is a very unpopular opinion, and that is okay. If you disagree with me, please go ahead and let me know in the comments, and we can talk about it. Okay, next up we have Chlorine by Jade Song, and this is where we started to get into our really weird speculative fiction, magical realism, bizarro books that I love. So many of the books I read in January really fit that description, and I couldn't be happier about it. So this book is about this girl. She is a teenager. She is a competitive swimmer on her high school swim team, and she is obsessed with swimming. Not only is she obsessed with swimming, but she is obsessed with mermaids. Very dark and eerie mermaids, not Disney Ariel, but like sirens who are luring people to their deaths, like really murderous mermaids. So the story follows her through her high school years, also a couple formative years, and it really focuses on her coming of age story, how she struggles to connect with her peers, how she manages her relationship with her best friend, and how she manages her relationship with her mother and dealing with the fact that her father has left. She is also an Asian American who is going to a predominantly white high school, so there are definitely themes of racial assimilation and racism and not quite fitting in. And as a competitive athlete and teenager, she also struggles a lot with her body, not only with it maturing and her having to deal with her menstrual cycle as an athlete, but also just coming to terms with her body and respecting it. And there's some body dysmorphia. There's definitely body manipulation and weight manipulation. The first half of the book, and this is like 250 pages, is really about that coming of age story. It also deals with sex. And so when I started reading this and I was about halfway through, I was kind of getting a little disappointed because I was like, I thought this was going to be a weird book because like first chapter she talks about becoming a mermaid. So I was sitting here like, is she going to turn into a mermaid or what? Like, what's happening? What's going to happen? So the first half of the book was feeling a little too lit fic for me. But in hindsight, that buildup was really important for the second half of the book because we start getting into the obsessive compulsive behaviors that are really driving the main character and her decisions, and it really impacts the ending. This is one of those books that really leaves you lost and confused in the end. You don't necessarily get definitive answers to certain questions, and it's open to interpretation. And I love books like that because those are the books that you can sit down with your book club and talk about and all come up with different hypotheses and fan theories and all of that. I think I originally rated this 3 stars, but about a day or two after I read it, I upgraded it to 4 stars because it was just one of those books that I couldn't stop thinking about after the fact, especially the ending. I do recommend this. I think it's a great book. And yeah, that is Chlorine by Jade Song. And this author does have a new book coming out this year, so I think I'm probably going to pick that up at some point because she is a good writer and you should check it out. Chlorine by Jade Song. Okay, the third book that I read in January is The Running Man by Stephen King. He originally wrote this under his pseudonym Richard Bachman. I definitely jumped on the hype train with this. I know everybody's reading it and talking about it because of the new movie. I have read about a dozen Stephen King books. I like to think I know what I'm getting into when I am reading a Stephen King book, but I have to say this was the first book I've ever read by him that is more of a thriller than a horror, and I did like it. That said, I hated every character in this book, like even the main character. Even once I understood what was motivating our main character, and even once I knew how things were going to play out, because it does have a somewhat predictable ending in my opinion, still didn't like this character. I just thought he was so over the top angry, and there's justification for it, but I just didn't like reading about him. Like, I want to be friends with him. I hope I never live in this world. But yeah, I just didn't like him. I had to get a blanket on my lap because a mosquito is coming for me. So the build up to this book, or the setup for the entire plot, was really short. It only took maybe 30 to 50 pages out of like 250 pages. I'm glad because I was kind of bored during the setup. I was like, I think that's because I hated the main character, so I just didn't care. But once the action picked up, I got hooked. I sat on my butt for 2 hours and finished it straight through. It was really riveting. And I know I said it was 250 pages, but all of the chapters basically end with like a blank page. So it really goes by quickly, and it's not small font. Like, this is a pretty short book, so if you're looking for something short and snappy and that you can read really quickly and will hook you, you should read this. There was this subplot. It's not really a subplot, it's like a big part of the plot, but there's this subplot of like conspiracy theories and environmental impacts and how it's like a dystopian world where people are suffering and how all these people have been brainwashed by the media to basically not care about anything except for reality TV, and they're just hooked onto their TVs all the time. Actually, very reminiscent of Fahrenheit 451. So you have some depth there in the storyline and just a lot of social and political commentary that Stephen King had basically on the future of civilization and the progression of technology and media. It's one of those very stick it to the man kind of books. Very Rage Against the Machine kind of book. It's not my favorite Stephen King book, but it's not my least favorite. Actually, another unpopular opinion for you, I like this book more than Pet Sematary. I would recommend this. I think I rated it 3 stars, but it's really like 3.5 if we're getting like nitpicky about it or detailed about it. I would recommend that you read The Running Man by Stephen King. Okay, after The Running Man, the 4th book that I read in January is Private Rights by Julia Armfield. I was really excited to read this book because I have read Our Wives Under the Sea by this author, and I really enjoyed that book. It was a 4-star book for me, and it was just wonderfully weird and one of those open for interpretation endings that I really enjoy. In fact, what I've been doing is saying that if you enjoyed Chlorine, to read Our Wives Under the Sea, and if you read Our Wives Under the Sea to read Chlorine, they remind me a lot of each other in weird different ways. That's why I wanted to read Private Rights, because I really liked Our Wives Under the Sea, and this book has this amazing premise of being a futuristic, pre-apocalyptic world where it won't stop raining and civilization is just starting to crumble because everything is flooding and infrastructures are failing, but we aren't quite at the apocalypse yet. We're still in that dawn of the apocalypse where everyone's just kind of pretending like it's not going to happen, but it is. But as a result of this like impending doom, you have people who are turning to ritualistic religions and behaviors, basically turning to cult-like activities. And you're also following these 3 sisters who are dealing with childhood shared trauma after their father has passes. So a great premise, right? And what this really delivers on is that sister dynamic, the shared trauma, the family drama. It does that really well. But we end up having the rainy water world atmosphere and the cult like rituals and all of that take a backseat to the family drama. And I didn't get as much as that as I wanted. It's really limited to like the first 10% of the book and the last 10% of the book, and the rest is mostly family drama. I didn't read this book for the family drama. I mean, if I'm gonna see the inside cover say it's Waterworld season and there are cults on every corner, that's what I want to read about. I want some mystery. I want a little bit of horror. I want weird stuff. So this didn't deliver that, and I was really disappointed. It's very well written and the characters are great, but the plot didn't give me what it promised, and very sad about it. That said, I would probably rate this 2.5 stars because it wasn't awful, but it wasn't great. So that was Private Rights by Julia Armfield. Moving on, and I'm losing track. I think this is the 5th book I read in January. This is The Possession of Alba Diaz by Isabel Cañas. I have not read any other books by her, but I do have The Vampires of El Norte and The Hacienda on my TBR because I love paranormal horror. And I went into this thinking that that's what this is, but it is primarily paranormal romance with horror. So if you watched my short on this, you'll know that my biggest critique of this book is that I think it should have been longer. This was so well written, and all of the elements were so enjoyable that I really actually felt like I missed out from this not being long enough because it has a lot to unpack. You have the love interest and the build up to that, and I really like the male protagonist, and I like the trope of forbidden love. That had it going for me. And then there is the possession part, which again, love paranormal stuff. That I really enjoyed. There are exorcism scenes in here, which were really good. And then you have some of the social commentary. There's commentary on church and religion. There's commentary on misogyny and sexism, female oppression, queer repression. There's a lot going on in this book. So the part that I really actually wanted to be drawn out more was the possession part, because I really love it when paranormal books have a slow burn buildup of like the creepy, crawly, creaky footstep like vibe where it's just like things that go bump in the night and people are just dismissing it, second guessing themselves, and it's this slow build up to just like true terror. I was hoping that the possession part would be more like that. It wasn't. I felt like it happened pretty quickly because a lot of the first half of the book was really focused on building that love interest. I don't want to take away from the love interest, but I want the possession part to be longer. That said, the second half of the book is really well done. I really enjoyed it. I think this book should be called The Exorcism of Alba Diaz, and I had a lot of fun with this book, and I'm really excited to read more by Isabel Cañas. I think she knows what she's doing. Just give me more. That's all I ask of you at this point. So this was 4 stars, and I definitely recommend The Possession of Alba Diaz, especially if you like paranormal, and especially if you like paranormal romance. This next book is pretty exciting. I finally read Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. I have seen bits and pieces of the movie with Natalie Portman, but not in any capacity where I had any idea what was going to happen in this book. So I did go into it spoiler free, and I knew it was about this expedition going into this sci-fi area X on behalf of the government in order to bring back information on what is in this area, and that this is the 12th expedition going in there, and all of the previous expeditions had ended in different ways, whether it be happy endings or death and murder. It's very fast paced, and the first half of this book was 5 stars. I was so locked in. I remember I laid down, I was like, I'm gonna read 1 chapter of Annihilation just to kind of get the ball rolling for tomorrow. And I laid down with this book, and I was 100 pages in before I knew what was happening. I was like supposed to be asleep, and I was like, I wish I could just keep reading, but I had some willpower that night, and I forced myself to go to sleep. So I picked it up the next day, and maybe that break in time caused this a little bit, but the second half of the book kind of dropped for me. I mean, it was still really good. I'd say it was like a 4-star second half. And I think that's because the farther you get into this book, the more you realize you're not going to get answers to everything. And there are so many questions in this book. It's so weird. It's so abnormal that you're just like, I need to know what's going on. And then you realize, oh, Jeff Vandermeer is not going to tell me what's going on. So I think I kind of realized that and I was a little jaded in the second half because I was like, dang, I want to know. That said, you do get some answers, and this is actually, I'm not sure if it's a trilogy or longer, but it is a series. So I do think I am going to continue reading this series, and I'm hoping that it gives us more answers. If you love weird sci-fi, and if you love just absolutely being discombobulated and having no idea what is going on, you should read this book for sure. That like desperation to know what you're reading reminds me of books like I Who Have Never Known Men and Wool by Hugh Howey. If you liked those books, you should read Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. I think I'm going to have to rate this. Right now, I'm feeling like it's 4.5 stars, but honestly, it could end up being 5 stars because it's just one of those books that is not going to leave me for a really long time. I'm going to remember this for years to come. I'm going to talk about it with people. I'm going to recommend it. Maybe probably 5 stars for Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. All right. After that, we read When the Reckoning Comes by LaTanya McQueen. This is another paranormal horror. It's about this woman who leaves her hometown but is suddenly invited back to attend an antebellum themed wedding at a plantation that is rumored to be haunted. I had really great expectations, especially for the ending, and my problem is what I expected to happen didn't really happen. I don't want to say more. I don't want to spoil it. If you go into it with different expectations than I went into it, then you're probably going to like this book better than I did. So I don't want to sit here and tell you what those expectations were for me and ruin it for you if you read this book. I also wanted a little bit more of the bump in the night haunting stuff like I talked about. Like that's just what I love about paranormal horror, is that slow creep. And this ended up being more historical in nature. You don't get a lot of experience with the ghost now, but you see more so their story and what led these ghosts to be so vengeful. This book really, the horror in this book is laying out the real historical horrors that happened to slaves. One of the other things, though, that is really important about this book is that you do spend time walking in the shoes of this Black woman who is at this plantation that is basically reenacting all of these horrific settings and scenes, and how white people can just walk around and enjoy it, and Black people walk around and just see the absolute horrific treatment of their lineage. So yes, this book is very, very poignant, very deep. I really appreciated its message, but I didn't get the reckoning that I wanted. I thought the ending was kind of anticlimactic after the build-up. I think, again, we got more of the perspective of the slaves that were tortured than any sort of reckoning that I thought was going to happen. So I rated this 3 stars, but I would recommend it as long as you kind of know what you're getting yourself into and don't have the wrong expectations. I think this is a very enjoyable book. That is When the Reckoning Comes by LaTanya McQueen. 2 more books. Next one is exciting. Ring Shout by P. Jelly Clark. This book is about these 3 women. They are resistance fighters, and they are fighting the Ku Klux. Yes, it is not necessarily the Ku Klux Klan. It is the Ku Klux, because what this book does is it takes this metaphorical spin on the KKK, and there are basically 2 different types of entities in the Klan. There are the Klan members who represent the people who still have some humanity left in them and could potentially change their ways. And then you have the Ku Klux, which are these, basically, I interpreted them as demonic entities. Basically, they've lost all of their humanity and are just monsters at this point. And so this book is really short. It's less than 200 pages, so it is jam-packed with action. You're following these resistance fighters as they uncover these really nefarious and world-ending plans that the Ku Klux are building and working towards, and our fighters here have to try to stop the worst from happening before they have no chance. I just love the metaphors in this. I love the weirdness in this. I loved the nods towards history, but done through this really over the top, fantastical plot line that is allegory through and through. And the characters are so well done. And I did immersive read this. I can say with a straight face, no doubt about it, that the audiobook for this is the best audiobook I have ever heard in my life. The narrator is superb. If you are an audiobook fan or an immersive reader, definitely check this book out. I think I originally rated this 4.5 stars, but I think it's getting upgraded to 5 stars because, again, kind of like Annihilation, it's one of those books that I'm not going to forget about. This is just a fantastic book. If you are looking for something to read this February, which is Black History Month, and you want to read a book by a Black author, I highly recommend you read Ring Shout by P. Jelly Clark. Last but not least, well, actually, last and maybe least, I'm so sorry. Okay, we have The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling. I have never read anything by this author before. Every time I see one of her books and their book covers, I'm so drawn to them. And then I read the synopsis, and it's about this castle under siege, and everyone is starving to death, and then these mystical, magical saints arrive bringing food, but there are 3 women in the castle who are somehow kind of immune to the powers of these saints. They can see the dark undercurrents of these saints and everything they're doing, and how this devotion and adoration that they are garnering from the rest of the castle is really this sick and infectious disease, basically. So you're following the 3 characters. They're trying not to succumb to these temptations, and they're trying to stay safe. They're trying to protect each other. They're trying to defeat the saints. But I felt Like, this ended up being almost claustrophobic because we were stuck in this castle and we were stuck with this cast of characters without any outside influence. And it just seemed like we were running from one end of the castle to the other, back and forth. And everyone was just always on the go, but to the point where I really didn't care what was happening because nothing was that twisty and turny. Nothing was that mysterious. And nothing was that horrific either. I mean, wow, that says something about me. It wasn't as weird as I expected it to be. Also, a lot of like the magic system was so convenient. Like, so many things that happened felt like they were just there to move the plot along, and it wasn't well defined. In fact, like in the end, you never really get a definition to how the magic system works. And I think that was intentional, but I also think it was underdeveloped. And so, because you don't understand how it works and there is no definition to it, anything can happen. And I think that took me out of it because when anything can happen, you're just like, well, I'm not going to try and figure this out. That actually sums it up really well for me. I couldn't care because I felt like if I tried to care, the rug was just going to get ripped out from underneath me. And I felt like some of the storylines would get like entangled but then disjointed, but never in any sort of cohesive pattern where I cared if the characters were interacting or not. There was just a lot not working for me in the way the actual plot plays out. I really should have DNF'd this. No, I felt really determined that I needed to finish this and review it, and I think that was also Booktok kind of influencing my decision. And if I had just DNF'd it and started reading something else, I would have been happier. Unfortunately, that is a negative tone to end on, but this was the last book that I read in January, and that is The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling. I rated this 2 stars, and I wouldn't really recommend it. All right, let me know in the comments if you have read any of these 9 wonderful books, and if you have, what did you think? Do you agree with any of my thoughts? Have I convinced you to read anything? And what should I read in February? Thank you so much for watching my videos, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe.